First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Shirley Min. Nichelle Polston is off this week. Should students be allowed to decide which gender they identify with at school? And should that decision be kept from their parents? It's a big debate in the First State.
A program at AI DuPont Hospital for Children aims to provide nourishment for young minds. It comes in the form of reading. They call the program Baby Bookworms.
And we have a tribute to hip hop this week from the University of Delaware.
First, your public media news magazine starts now. How far should Delaware school districts go in making sure they don't discriminate against transgender children? It's a tricky balancing act, and we've made that subject the topic of our first look this week. Mark Eichman joins Delaware education reporter Chris Barish in our newsroom with more.
Thanks, Shirley. It's called Regulation 225, and it's designed to create a blanket anti-discrimination policy for Delaware public schools. But Chris, while this proposed policy is supposed to provide protections for transgender students, instead it's generated lots and lots of controversy.
Well, Mark, it boils down to this. Should schools have to tell parents their child has decided to go by a different gender in class? Should kids decide which bathroom that they use? These are some of the issues the state's trying to tackle with this policy. Maddie Heaney was born in a boy's body with a boy's name. But Maddie knew long before she started school that she was really a girl. She wore girls' clothes and was, in her mind, a princess.
There wasn't a doubt about it. And then as I got older, went into preschool, kindergarten, I noticed people didn't think of me as a girl, and I would get weird looks when I would play dress up or do things that were normal to me.
Maddie's sense of self began wavering by third grade. That's when the boys kept quizzing the classmate who looked like them but acted differently.
Why are you playing with the girls? Why are you playing with stuffed animals and Barbies? Why don't you play sports with us and everything? And that's when I sort of felt very uncomfortable and became really depressed, and I sort of tried to make myself more masculine than I was and tried being the complete opposite person that I was to please everyone around me. It was probably the lowest point of my life. It was awful.
But with the blessings of her family, in 5th grade, Maddie formally began her transition to a girl. In June, she will graduate from Cab Calloway School of the Arts in Wilmington, where she majors in drama, and classmates and staff alike embrace her. While Maddie is now making plans to transition to college, a debate is raging in Delaware educational circles about how other transgender students are treated in public schools. The controversy revolves around the draft policy of a statewide anti-discrimination regulation sought by Governor John Carney. It generated 11,000 written comments, most in opposition. The key point of contention is a provision that allows schools to not notify parents if a transgender student wants to use a different name than at home. To do so, schools would first be required to take into consideration the safety, health, and well-being of the student.
If this were to be implemented in our schools, we would allow students with no age stipulation, so as young as 4 and 5 years old, to really explore the idea of being an opposite gender or not. And if a parent is deemed unsupportive of that, very easily the school system could decide to get around the parent and begin to interact with that child very differently than their biological reality.
Nicole Tice heads the Delaware Family Policy Council, which led opposition to the policy. Tice and allies say the proposal would illegally elevate the rights of minor children over those of adult parents. They vow to sue the state and any districts that adopt such a policy.
Whatever it takes to really preserve parental authority, we'll be all in.
The umbrella groups for state school boards and superintendents also have concerns. Another vehement foe is state lawmaker Rich Collins, a Republican from Sussex County.
I do not believe that our schools should be in the business of getting into our little children's minds all the way down to age 5 and convincing them that they should live in a way that maybe their parents would not agree with. We're talking about a major change in how our schools would operate. One of the largest policy changes maybe in the history of this state.
Hyperbole aside, Collins rightly describes the polarizing nature of the draft regulation. There's also widespread controversy over the section that says schools will provide access to locker rooms and bathrooms that correspond to students' gender identity or expression. Opposing views were on raw display during a boisterous meeting in February of the team Carney appointed to develop the policy.
You have not the power to dictate what amounts to the emancipation of our children without the consent of their parents, and also without the legal or constitutional authority to do so.
A 12-year-old trans girl does not put the community at risk by using the ladies' room.
The parents who are probably having the biggest problem with this are more than likely the parents who would not accept these children. Most of the children are homeless.
Wilmington lawyer Mark Papora, a development team member, stresses that many states have enacted similar provisions with little fanfare. He said the provision allowing schools to bypass parents came after much debate. It would only be used on rare occasions, if at all.
There were people who were very concerned about the safety of some students, in particular transgender students, whose parents may not support them, may not agree that they're transgender. And so we thought that that was potentially harmful to students, that it would jeopardize their safety and well-being if the parent was notified before the child was ready to tell the parent about their gender identity. It's very important to LGBT people to have control over who they come out to and when they come out to them. Because frankly, your world can change in a second.
Maddie's stepmother, Andrea Rashbaum, is also on the policy development team. She's not surprised by the backlash. She experienced it firsthand.
We lost friends. We didn't talk to family for a while. And people would say to us, like, well, for our event, could he come as a boy? Because, he's a boy. And I would say, no, she's a girl, and she's going to come as a girl.
But Maddie persevered, and with the help of counseling and medical treatments, is thriving as a girl. At Cab Calloway, she's treated like any other student. She uses the girls' bathrooms and locker rooms without any drama.
It's like essential that I have the safety, and every trans kid has the safety to be themselves, use the bathroom that they want, use the pronouns that they want, be called the name they want. Yeah, it's just a human right. In situations where parents might not be accepting, school might be a safe haven for them. It might be a place where they don't feel as judged.
Carney has stated his commitment to schools that are, quote, welcoming, inclusive places where students and staff members alike can flourish. But because there is so much opposition, Rashbaum wonders whether he and top education officials will ultimately adopt the draft policy.
I have concerns that they're going to just let it float away in the wind.
It remains to be seen whether the panel stands its ground on key provisions, such as parental notification or bathroom usage. But a lot of interested parties will be watching the Carney administration to see how it handles the transgender conundrum.
So Chris, what's the next steps in this? Can the administration just put forward this policy, or does the Board of Education have to sign off? How does it work?
Well, it depends. If they make significant changes to the draft, then it'll go back for public comment, and this could take months. If they leave it pretty much intact, Education Secretary Susan Bunning will confer with Governor Carney and decide whether to adopt it or not. If they do adopt it, then the 19 school districts have to decide if they want to adopt a similar policy like Carney wants them to. And at that point, the conservative factions, which are sort of waiting in the wings to sue, are poised to take action. So
let's take a look at the kind of human aspect of this for a second and talk about Maddie's kind of candor in talking about what must have been a difficult childhood and transition.
Well, Maddie was poised beyond her years. Maybe it's her education and training as a dramatic arts student. I'm sure her, the support of her parents has a lot to do with it. But she was as calm and self-possessed, discussing the most personal issue as any student I've ever interviewed.
All right, thanks, Chris, and I'm sure we'll be following this as it develops. And you can follow Chris's reporting at WHYY.org/news. We'll head back to the studio for more of First, coming up next.
Coming up on First, the science behind solving crimes is getting better all the time. First introduces you to the Cold Case Squad. And later, a Milton artist takes everyday scenes of Delaware and adds his unique touch. It's almost been a year since AI DuPont Hospital for Children introduced a new reading program for its most vulnerable patients. Through Baby Bookworms, the fragile babies in the neonatal intensive care unit are not only being nourished physically, their brains are being fed too. Nicole Hall's twins, Logan and Liam, were born 14 weeks premature.
Logan's doing a little bit better than Liam. He was a little bit bigger when they were born, so he's a little bit further ahead. Liam's just kind of hanging out and trying to get off the little ventilator that he's on.
Because they were born so early, Hall's boys are in the neonatal intensive care unit here at AI DuPont Hospital for Children. Their every need is met in the NICU, including their mental needs now. NICU nurse Sarah Baki came up with the idea of Baby Bookworms, a program the hospital started in June.
Baby Bookworms is really about language nutrition. So language nutrition is the idea that, we give breast milk to nourish the body, but words nourish the brain.
Research shows exposing children to lots of quality words before the age of 3 gives them a huge academic advantage later on in life.
During 0 and 18 months, that's the period of the most rapid brain growth that occurs in life. And so when we educate parents and tell them this simple act of reading can have such a great impact on their baby's later academic success, I think that empowers them to really help, play a role in that and feel like they're making an impact and partnering with us and the volunteers.
And when mom and dad can't be there, volunteers make the reading rounds 3 times a day, 7 days a week. The March of Dimes Delaware chapter donated the books and the mobile cart that parents and volunteers can pull from.
Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon.
18-year-old Jessica Coulter volunteers at the hospital and loves how the simple act of reading a nursery rhyme can make such a difference.
Babies, even though they are very young, most people think that they don't understand what I'm saying. But when you talk, and especially when you talk in melody and you say repetition, all of that has a really big impact. They really take that in, especially when they're in the NICU. They're hearing monitors and the same sounds, the same voices. So when you get a chance to bring them out of that zone, they really, really take that in.
I think it's really cool just because we can't be here all the time. So to know that they're reading to them and kind of nourishing them in that way is really cool.
I am aware of some reading programs in other hospitals, but I think that this is really a unique program, just the scale of the program and the unique elements of having the volunteers come on a regular basis and the education that we're doing with the parents. I'm not aware of anything like it.
Baki says the next chapter of Baby Bookworms is to expand the program to other parts of the hospital. Volunteers leave notes for the parents telling them what books were read to their babies while they were gone, and little updates like, Logan grabbed my finger. Baby Bookworms also ties in nicely to Nemours' Reading Bright Start program, which already existed and is geared toward early childhood literacy.
Hip-hop is an important part of mainstream culture now, but it wasn't always that way. Nichelle Polston checked in on some University of Delaware students who pay tribute to that type of music, and they do so with creativity, art, and education.
It wasn't until the late 70s when rap went mainstream, but before then, the pioneers of hip-hop showed off their skills in the Bronx, giving birth to music that still influences today's culture.
Hip-hop is freedom. It's freedom to be who I am. It's freedom for me to be able to express my thoughts, my opinions, unapologetically.
The evolution of hip-hop is important to a group of University of Delaware students who decided to take people on a journey through exhibits and some dance performances. Though this scene looks like one big party, the goal, according to Edward Franklin of UD's Cultural Advisory Board, is to educate students often misinformed about the music.
Hip-hop has been an integral part of, I would say, the African American community for over the past 40 years. It's been able to connect to a bunch of different political and social injustices, and it's something that our students connect to.
To further connect students, every decade in hip-hop is represented. From the 70s to the 2000s, Several things here, like these old vinyl records, are just synonymous with hip-hop.
Everything we do in this time is influenced by the past, so 90s is really big for this time period for us.
The visual exhibit definitely caught the attention of one student who says he was drawn to hip-hop at an early age.
I'm a lover of hip-hop. Hip-hop really raised me alongside my parents. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, but I discovered hip-hop at a very young age. And you know, as an adolescent, male, growing up, learning a lot of values, you could either be, straight one way or straight the other. And I think hip-hop was there.
Obi even names a few of his all-time favorites.
We can take it back and say KRS-One. We can talk about the Outkast. We can even talk about the Sugar Hill Gang, really. Everything in between.
As for what time period students enjoyed the most, it was a tie between two decades.
I've had fun doing the 70s and 80s just because researching the fashion and the trends that were going on during that time, it really shows how our trends in fashion haven't changed much, and I have witnessed where it may have started.
However, some question whether or not hip-hop is headed in the right direction.
It's a bit different now. It still serves its purpose, which is primarily for people to be able to express themselves and to be able to use their voice. The message has just changed over time, and I would say it's probably a big contributor is, the life and the day and age that we're currently in today.
And if these students can help it, hip-hop is here to stay.
Nichelle reports that every semester, the Cultural Advisory Board works to put on at least one educational event to bring students together while having fun at the same time.
In our first experience this week, we head to Milton and the studio of artist Nick Sarator. Using pastels, Nick paints landscapes, interpreting the world around him and making the mundane seem anything but.
My name is Nick Sarator. I am a pastel artist. Being an artist has been a very rewarding career, very challenging career. I work in my studio 9 to 5 every day. I'm fortunate to have a nice studio I can work in. It gets me out of the house. I think that the glamorous notion that artists just paint on their easels and the paintings just go to galleries and sell is not true. And I should know that better than anyone. It's hard work, but it's rewarding. I love landscapes. A time of day affects people. Sunshine affects people, a cloudy day affects people. But I don't like to paint exactly what I'm looking at. I like to take things that we see on a daily basis and make them extraordinary, make them more than what they are. For example, I was on a road and it was just a flat road, but there was like wetlands on each side of the road that kind of went to the surface of the road. And there was just the way the sun was hitting this straggly pile of grass or whatever and reeds. I got out of the car and photographed it. I really liked the composition. There's people wouldn't even think to even stop and look at it. And now I've taken this common scene and bring it to life. I want people to look at it. I want them to feel something from it. Walk away with a sense of peace. In this day and age and everything that's going on, we all need a break from reality. I find with my paintings, they kind of offer that to people. They offer that few seconds of visual calmness. The thing I love most is when I get caught up in it. It's that joy of watching it come together. And I like to photograph my paintings in its stages. The blank, the sketch, the wash, everything. And I like to put that out there for people to see the process from start to end. I too want to be a famous artist, and whether that happens, that's great. I'm happy with what I do. I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I hope I can keep doing this for the rest of my life. I want the viewer to become immersed in their own experience when you see my work. That's what I want people to take away. And I also want them to say, hey, that's one heck of a great pastel.
Nick was just named Artist in Residence at the Delaware Public Archives State Building in Dover, and you can see some of his work on display there. Nick teaches classes out of his Milton studio, and you can get more information on those as well as see more of Nick's work at seratorart.com.
The creation of cold case units has become popular, especially with the rise of TV shows like Cold Case. And as the science behind solving those cases improves, so does the rate of solving cases. The Cold Case Squad in Newcastle County has been around since 2014, and it's had some success. The clock starts ticking as soon as investigators arrive on the scene of a crime. But what happens when a case isn't solved? It's handed over to the Cold Case Squad, and now time is an asset.
We currently and most recently cleared a case that we were investigating for the better part of a year and a half.
It takes time to understand the specific intricacies of each murder.
When we take over a case, it takes 3 to 4 weeks at least just to dive in, and we're looking at finding the evidence, looking at all the reports and digging into it, and just going back instead of trying to pick up where everything left off. You go back and you do the initial crime report.
Glenn Davis and Detective Brian Shahan are the men behind Newcastle County's Cold Case Homicide Squad. Shahan is a 20-year veteran. Davis, who works in a civilian capacity, retired from the police department in 1995. Back when he was investigating cases, he had to rely on fingerprints and evidence collected from the scene. But crime solving in the 21st century has changed.
It's a whole new era of criminal investigation. It also, the DNA technology. When I retired, it was very much in its infancy stage. Today, it is probably one of the most investigative tools that come across the criminal investigator's mind when they're doing a criminal investigation, and is very successful. And that technology continues to grow. That was my biggest curve when I returned.
But Shahan has been able to help his partner get up to speed. Since its inception in 2014, the Cold Case Unit has made several arrests, including cases dating back to 1985. And it's a combination of old school patience, new school technology, and critical thinking that helps them solve those crimes.
We slow down and we dig into, from the bottom all the way to the top. And it does make a difference because we have time to look into it. And then we also have time to approach it in different angles and different ways.
It also helps that Davis and Shahan know they can depend on one another.
My partner is, he has his 20 years in, and him and I have developed quite a friendship and a working relationship, and we trust each other.
Their rock-solid partnership stems from their perspective of not taking themselves too seriously.
The first meeting that we had, we introduced each other, and I said, I'm Brian Shahan, I'm coming over from the Major Crimes. And he had been working with a different partner. So I'd seen his work ethic, I've heard about him, and that he's a go-getter. And so I just said, how old I am, and at the time I think I was 42. And so he said, partner, I'm 60-some years old, I work out 6 days a week, and I eat healthy. And I said, all right, well, I'm 42 years old. I stopped working out and I eat like crap, excuse my language. So right then and there we just kind of chuckled and we just started feeding off each other.
Detective Shahan says he's also learned from Davis that there is life outside of the job and that he needs to prioritize his family life too. And if you caught the give and take with those two Cold Case Squad members, you get a little glimpse of how they help each other.
As we head into the Easter season in a couple of weeks, we thought it was worth revisiting the story of a Wilmington church and its efforts to rebuild their 60-year-old pipe organ. Well, they did it with help from hundreds of people. Let's step inside the Episcopal Church of Saints Andrew and Matthew for an update. Take a listen. The music fills the sanctuary of the Episcopal Church of Saints Andrew and Matthew.
Pipe organs tend to give the effect that the whole room is the organ.
The 2,897 pipes represent the 3 parishes that now make up SAM. St. Matthew's and St. John's joined St. Andrew's when their parishes closed. Pipes from the 3 different parishes make up the organ you see today.
I think all of the people that were from those parishes sort of lament the fact that those don't exist anymore. but at the same time, they're happy about this new incarnation of them.
It all started 5 years ago when the church launched the Sharing Our Blessings campaign. The church needed money to not only renovate their kitchen, but also to restore their organ, which had seen better days.
The kitchen to help us with our ministry with the community, the organ with our commitment to creative liturgies and being a center for music in the community.
Campaign Chair Pat Saunders set out to raise more than $1.3 million. As of May 15th, SAM exceeded their goal by $100,000.
This has been a truly roller coaster ride, and we've had really down moments and really up moments. I laid in bed many nights and wondered how we were going to get anything.
In addition to grant money, Saunders says $100,000 was raised through sponsoring a pipe for the organ in honor of a loved one.
When you hear the organ played and you have given a pipe for a loved one, that loved one is still with you in the music, in that sanctuary, in that space.
In all, more than 450 people contributed, giving as little as $5 or as much as $200,000.
Everybody gave what little they could, or a lot that they could, but together it has made the culmination of this wonderful organ here today.
The Catherine Esterly organ was dedicated last year. It's named after the well-known pediatrician, community leader, and longtime member of SAM. And there are still opportunities to sponsor a pipe in honor of a loved one. Go to sam.org to find out how.
Next week on First, we offer 2 stories for Women's History Month. One focuses on a Wilmington artist who really immerses herself in her painting. The other is about making computer coding cool for young girls.
We'll be in Middletown for that story. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Chris Barish, Nichelle Polston, and Mark Eichman, I'm Shirley Min. Have a great week.